This happened a few months ago. I was 35 and had just moved to Maple Grove. I wanted a quieter life, so I decided to volunteer at the local church. It seemed like a good way to meet people and give back to the community. But things took a turn for the strange. One Friday evening, I found myself alone in the church basement. I was going through old boxes when I stumbled upon a dusty journal. Curious, I opened it. The pages were filled with unsettling entries, missing persons, flickering candles, and whispers of hymns. I could hardly stop reading. But then I heard it, a faint hymn echoing through the empty hall. It sent chills down my spine. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. Strange things started happening at the church. The lights flickered when I worked late. They blinked out suddenly, then returned just as fast. Shadows darted past me when I turned to look. I felt cold all over. I thought maybe I was just tired, but then the old organ started playing, on its own. I looked around, but the hall was empty. Confused and scared, I tried talking to the people in town about what I was experiencing. Their faces changed when I mentioned the church. They'd glance away and change the subject. "Oh, it's just an old building," they'd say, but I could tell they were hiding something. The whispers about dark experiences stayed heavy in the air, almost like a warning. One night, while setting up for an event, I heard the hymn again. It wrapped around me, pulling me in. I followed the sound, my heart pounding as I moved through the dark halls. The echoes grew louder, and I felt as if someone was watching me. The air felt thick and heavy. I thought I might run into something strange, but when I turned the corner, the room was empty, just silence. That silence was terrifying. I left that night with a knot in my stomach. Why was this happening? Why did the journal speak of missing people? I couldn't understand what was going on. The next few weeks passed slowly. I wanted to shake the feeling that something was lurking in the church. Then I went back to the basement. I needed answers, but the only sound was my breathing. I opened the journal again, desperately searching for something that made sense. And then it happened again. The hymn played in the distance, but this time it felt darker. I froze. Was it calling me? I said no out loud, but it felt too late. I've never gone back to that church. I still think about the journal and the whispers. I wonder what happened to those missing people. Maybe I'll never know. All I can say is there's something in Maple Grove that hides within the church walls. It's better to steer clear. Trust me. A few weeks passed since I had last set foot in the church, and the unsettling events still haunted my thoughts. I tried to carry on with my life in Maple Grove, but every creak of my floorboards or the rustle of leaves outside would send me into a cold sweat. Questions circled my mind like vultures. What was the story behind that journal? What happened to the missing people? Why did the townsfolk avoid the topic? I felt an urge to find out the truth, but fear kept me paralyzed. One Friday evening, I decided to invite a couple of neighbors over for dinner. I needed a distraction. They arrived, and we began chatting, but the conversation was strange. Every time I mentioned the church, their expressions tightened. I tried to steer the talk elsewhere, but I couldn't help but feel the walls closing in. After dinner, one of my neighbors, an older woman named Helen, lingered. She looked thoughtful, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, she leaned closer and said, "You know, dear, sometimes it's best to leave things alone." I couldn't resist the urge to push for more. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "There are stories, you see. Not all of them are meant to be uncovered," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Her gaze shifted to the ground, and that was it. She walked away, leaving me more confused than ever. Then something unexpected happened. I received a message from an unknown number late that night. The text read, "I know what you heard." My heart dropped. Was this person connected to the church? I felt the tension rise in my chest. I quickly typed back, "Who is this?" No response came. Frustrated, I stared at my phone. I felt like I was missing something vital. After a restless night, I decided to dig deeper into the church's history. The next day, I stopped by the town library. The librarian, a woman with sharp eyes, seemed to know why I was there. "Looking for the history of the church?" she asked, almost knowing my intent before I did. "Yes," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. She led me to a dusty section in the back. "Be careful," she murmured as she left. I began flipping through pages, and it didn't take long before I found an article from decades ago. It spoke of a fire in the church that had taken several lives, including a group of children during a choir practice. My stomach twisted at the thought. That's when I saw it. A name in the article matched an entry in the journal. The same missing person. My skin prickled with fear. I sank back into my seat, trying to process it. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the library plunged into darkness for a brief moment. Panic rushed through me. The librarian returned, looking just as startled as I was. "Nothing to worry about," she said, but her voice was shaky. I knew better. Something was lingering in Maple Grove, and I was becoming trapped in an unfolding mystery. I had to know more, but I also felt increasingly cornered. Before I could leave, a woman walked into the library. She looked familiar, and as she approached, my blood ran cold. "I've been looking for you," she said, her voice low and haunting. That was when I realized I shouldn't have come here. I stumbled back, unsure how to respond. The woman's familiar features twisted my thoughts, but I couldn't place her. My mind raced with possibilities. Had I seen her at the church? The thought sent a chill down my spine. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out. She leaned in closer, her breath chilling the air between us. "You're digging too deep. You don't understand what you're getting into." I felt panic rise in my chest. "I need to know the truth," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Her expression shifted, an eerie calm washing over her face. "The truth? In Maple Grove, the truth costs more than you can afford." She paused and took a step back, gauging my reaction. "You must stop for your own sake." "Why?" I demanded, but her eyes were locked on something behind me. I turned, but nothing was there. When I looked back, she was gone. The library felt suffocating. I decided it was time to leave. I clutched the journal and hurried to the door, my heart pounding. As I stepped outside, the sun pierced through the clouds, but the weight of what I had learned pressed down on me. Back at home, I locked the door and sank onto my couch, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I glanced at my phone. No new messages. I replayed the woman's words in my mind. Who was she, and what did she know? I needed help. Maybe I could approach someone who might have answers. I thought of Helen, but what would I even say? Instead, I grabbed my car keys and drove to the diner. I hoped to catch Liam. He was a local who had lived here all his life. The diner was buzzing, filled with the comforting sounds of coffee cups clinking and laughter. I spotted Liam at the counter, sipping a cup of coffee. He looked up as I approached. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I need to ask you something," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "It's about the church." A shadow crossed his face. "I don't think that's a good topic, Jess. I found something important," I pressed. "People went missing, and there was a fire." Liam frowned, looking around as if to ensure nobody was listening. "You should forget it. Those stories are dangerous." "Why? What happened?" I felt desperate. He sighed, his eyes flickering to the window as if expecting trouble. "Let's just say, not everyone is gone." "What? Do you mean?" My heart raced. Before he could answer, the bell on the door jingled, and I felt a sudden chill. I turned to see the woman from the library walking in, her gaze fixed on me. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "Speak of the devil," Liam said under his breath. I realized in that moment there was no escaping the truth today, and whatever it was, it had come to find me. I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing as the woman made her way toward us. Liam's eyes widened slightly. "Don't make eye contact," he whispered. But it was too late. She was already here. She stepped up to our table, her gaze intense. "You shouldn't be talking about the church," she said. The distant chatter of the diner faded as her words hung in the air like a warning. "Who are you?" I blurted out, suddenly reckless. "Someone who knows," she replied, a slight tremor in her voice that suggested she might not be as calm as she appeared. Liam shifted uncomfortably, sipping his coffee too quickly. I could see his struggle between wanting to help and wanting to stay safe. "This isn't a conversation for here," he said softly, glancing at the other patrons, oblivious to the tension brewing at our table. "What do you mean, not everyone is gone?" I pressed, ignoring Liam's caution. "Did the fire take them?" The woman's eyes darkened, and I saw a flicker of fear in them. "Some may have escaped the flames, but they haven't exactly moved on." "What do you know?" Liam asked, clearly on edge. She leaned even closer. "You need to understand, ignorance is safety in Maple Grove. Whatever you think you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg." Liam shook his head. "This isn't right. We should go." "No." The woman's tone hardened. "This is your last warning, Jess. You need to back off before it's too late. You're in over your head." The hint of desperation in her tone finally sank in. Fear coiled tightly in my stomach. "Why are you warning me? What do you want from me?" "I'm trying to keep you alive." She turned abruptly, walking away as she continually glanced over her shoulder. My heart raced. I felt a strange rush of adrenaline. "Wait!" I shouted, but she pushed through the door, the bell clanging behind her. "What just happened?" Liam said, bewildered. "You don't get it. You need to drop this." "I can't," I said, the determination in my voice surprising even myself. "There's something here, something real, and I can't just ignore it." Liam opened his mouth, likely to argue, but then the power flickered in the diner. The overhead lights blinked off for a moment before flaring back to life. I glanced towards the window. An ominous cloud seemed to gather on the horizon. "I have to go follow her," I said. "Jess, please," Liam said, reaching for my arm. "You don't know what you're dealing with." That's when I saw it. A flash of something, dark and ominous, through the window. I turned just in time to see a figure slip around the side of the diner. My heart raced anew, pounding in my ears. "Do you see that?" I whispered. Liam followed my gaze, his face paling. "No, forget it. Let's just leave." But it was too late. I had already made up my mind. Stepping outside, I felt the cool breeze hit my face as I scanned the parking lot. The figure was gone, but something told me it hadn't left. My pulse quickened, and just like that, the truth seemed even more elusive than ever, and lurking beneath the surface was a promise of danger. Suddenly, I realized I was no longer just chasing answers. I was being hunted. Chapter 2: The Gathering Storm. I stepped into the dim light of the parking lot, the air thick with anticipation. My eyes searched every shadow, every nook for the dark figure I had just seen. "Jess, please!" Liam's voice pulled me back momentarily, urgency lacing his words. "I can't just ignore this," I insisted, my voice steadier than I felt. I turned toward the street, trying to shake off the doubt creeping in. The woman had warned me, and her fear felt real, but so did my need for answers. I started walking. Each step felt heavy, like the ground itself was trying to pull me back. I wasn't just following a lead. I was walking into something I didn't yet understand. The diner lights flickered again, plunging us into momentary darkness before they buzzed back to life. It was like a warning bell that this wasn't an ordinary night. "Where do you think she went?" Liam asked, still hovering at the edge of the diner. His reluctance stung, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. The faintest rustle behind me made me spin around. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of movement near the dumpster. "Liam, stay close," I whispered, squaring my shoulders and heading toward the sound. Adrenaline coursed through me. I half expected the woman to emerge, but instead, I found only silence. The distant rumble of thunder echoed in the background like a threat looming over us. We reached the dumpster, and I peered around it, breathing heavily. There was nothing but abandoned trash, but the air felt charged, like electricity before a storm. Just as I was about to turn back, I spotted a glimmer, a shard of glass or metal reflecting the diner's lights. I knelt down, glancing at Liam, who watched anxiously. "What is it?" he asked, stepping closer. In my hand lay a small medallion. It was ornate, bearing symbols I didn't recognize, darkened as if it had been left outside for ages. My fingers traced the contours, and a chill rippled through me. "What if this belongs to her?" I said, feeling an unsettling connection.
"To it." Liam leaned in, squinting at the symbol. "We should just give it to the police, or—" "No," I interrupted, trembling with a mix of excitement and dread. "We can't go to anyone, not yet." "What do you mean? This could lead us into more trouble. There's something going on here, and if that woman was right, the church, whatever's left of it, it's tied to this." A sudden thought struck me. "We need to check the church." His expression turned serious. "Jess, that's dangerous. You know that, right?" I nodded, the weight of my decision sinking in. The lightning cracked, illuminating the sky for just a moment, and for the briefest instant, I thought I saw the silhouette of that figure again near the church. "I have to know what happened. We have to go." As we made our way to the parking lot exit, a feeling of being watched washed over me. Suddenly, Liam stopped. "Wait," he said, his voice low and strained. "Someone's coming." Before I could react, a dark shape appeared from the edge of the trees. It was too fast to see clearly, but the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind us. My heart raced again, fear clawing at my throat. "Run!" Liam shouted. We didn't need any more convincing. We sprinted toward the car, but I glanced back just in time to see the figure step out into the open. Instinctively, I recognized that this wasn't just a shadow. It was a threat. "Go, now!" My voice broke as I yanked the car door open. The rush of fear heightened, and as I threw myself into the driver's seat, I realized that whatever lay ahead would not only challenge our bravery, but it might also reveal answers that some wanted to stay buried. Chapter 3. Into the Unknown. I slammed the car door shut, my breath coming out in quick, desperate bursts. Liam clutched the dashboard, his knuckles white. "What are you doing? Start the car!" I fumbled with the keys, heart racing, pulse pounding in my ears. Why was I hesitating? Driving away felt wrong. I caught a glimpse of the figure again, still lurking, still watching. A dark silhouette against the distant streetlights. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to face this, to uncover the truth. "Jess, come on!" Liam's voice broke through my fog of uncertainty. I finally turned the key, and the engine roared to life. I backed out of the parking spot and hit the gas, tires screeching against the asphalt. As we sped down the road, the church loomed in the distance. It was already dark, but now flashes of lightning cut through the clouds, illuminating the path ahead. "You really think she went there?" Liam asked, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. "I don't know, but we have to check," I said, my voice steady, but my insides twisted in knots. That medallion can't just be a coincidence. The streets were empty. Time felt suspended. Every bump in the road made my stomach drop. I parked the car hastily near the church entrance, feeling a sense of foreboding wash over me. "We shouldn't," Liam began,
But I interrupted him, my mind made up. I need to see for myself. You can wait here if you want, I offered, half hoping he would join me. He exhaled sharply. No way, I'm not letting you go in there alone. As we stepped outside, the wind howled like a warning. My grip tightened around the medallion in my pocket. I approached the old church, its stained glass windows glinting ominously in the flash of lightning. Something about it felt alive, almost breathing. I glanced back at Liam, who looked both terrified and intrigued. The church door creaked open with a push, revealing darkness inside. I took a deep breath and stepped over the threshold. Dust motes floated in the air like trapped souls. A shaft of light from a weak lantern flickered at the far end. I took a tentative step toward it. Is anyone here? My voice echoed back eerily, swallowed by the shadows. Maybe we should call out again? Liam suggested, his eyes darting around. No, I whispered harshly. Just listen. The silence stretched, heavy and thick. Then, a faint whisper seemed to answer back. It floated through the air, barely discernible, like a forgotten prayer. Help us. I froze, chills racing down my spine. Did you hear that? Yeah, but Jess, Liam started, but I was already moving forward, toward the sound. Each step felt like a pull towards an answer, even as my instincts screamed for me to turn back. Suddenly, the lantern's light flickered out, plunging us into darkness. Panic gripped me. Liam! And then, everything went dark. The air chilled around us, and something shifted in the shadows. I could hear heavy breathing, not my own. It was close, too close. My hand shot out to grasp Liam's arm. What's happening? I felt him tense beside me. I don't know. We need to get out of here. A dark figure appeared in the small window, blocking the faintest sliver of light. Outlined against the glass, I recognized the same silhouette we had seen before. This time, it wasn't alone. With a rush of adrenaline, I pulled us back toward the door, desperation fueling my movements. As I yanked it open, I knew whatever secrets this church held were ready to unleash, and we might not be able to escape them. Chapter 4. Shadows Unveiled. The door swung open with a shriek, revealing the dim twilight outside, but it felt like a banning scream. I rushed through, dragging Liam behind me. The moment we stepped into the night, I could taste fear in the air. We stumbled onto the gravel path, breathing hard, every shadow around us deepening the dread in my gut. What was that? Liam asked, his eyes wide and scared. I don't know, I said, still looking back.
The dark entrance of the church. But we need to keep moving. We jogged a few paces towards the car, but something snagged my attention. Just beyond the church, where the grass met the woods, a flicker of light danced. Wait, I called out, holding up a hand to stop Liam. Do you see that? Liam squinted into the trees. What is that? A flashlight? More like a candle. A familiar fear crawled up my spine. It looks like it's coming from behind those trees. My pulse quickened. What if it led us to answers? Jess, I really think we should just leave. His words fell flat as they clashed against my curiosity. I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat. But what if it's related to the medallion? We can't just ignore it. Against his will, Liam followed me back toward the light. Each step was heavier than the last. The chirp of crickets buzzed louder, almost mockingly, as we edged toward the woods. As we got closer, the light flickered, and I made out shapes among the trees. 2 figures, standing too still. I squinted, trying to piece them together. Do you see who they are? I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. Liam took a deep breath. Yeah, but we shouldn't be this close. Before I could reply, one of the figures turned. A sharp gasp escaped my lips. It was the woman from the medallion. Her face, pale and twisted with fear, stared directly at me. The candle she held flickered as if caught in a fierce wind. Help us, she whispered,
her voice a hoarse echo of what I had heard in the church. "Liam, what do we do?" I barely managed to choke out. "Jess, run!" he urged, panic breaking through his bravado. But I couldn't move. Something in her desperate eyes anchored me in place. "I can't just leave her," I whispered, barely audible. The other figure stepped closer, revealing an expression that twisted my stomach. I recognized him, too. He was the one I had seen lingering outside the church, his shadows twisting oddly on the ground. "Leave here before it's too late," he said, his words curling around my thoughts like smoke. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Then, out of nowhere, a shadow seemed to drop from the trees, rushing toward us. It was as if the night itself was coming alive. I spun around to pull Liam back, but the light flickered again, and when I faced the figures, they were gone. "Where did they go?" Liam whispered, fear spilling from his eyes. I don't know." Panic was rising, and it felt like I couldn't breathe. That's when I saw it, a glint on the ground, just where they had stood. I knelt down to inspect it. It was another medallion. This one, dark and foreboding, lay half buried in the dirt, and I knew it was only the beginning of whatever dark truth awaited us. Chapter 5.
Veils of darkness. I stared at the new medallion, my heart racing. Its surface was cold and smooth, almost like the polished obsidian my grandmother used to collect, but there was something more sinister about it. I reached out, brushing my fingers against its intricate patterns, and a chill ran up my arm. "Jess, we need to get out of here," Liam said, his voice raw with urgency. "Now!" His plea pulled me back to reality. I quickly pocketed the medallion, trying to shake off the unease gripping me. "Yeah, you're right." I turned toward the path, but the feeling of being watched gnawed at me, heavier than before. We hurried back to the car, casting furtive glances over our shoulders. The woods seemed alive, rustling with something just out of sight. The shadows moved differently there. It felt like they were shifting, whispering secrets that escaped our ears. Once we reached the car, I fumbled for the keys in my pocket. My hands shook as I finally found them. I glanced at Liam. His eyes were darting around, scanning the darkness. "Do you really think they were trying to warn us, or were they just playing with us?" I couldn't answer right away. The woman's face echoed in my mind, and the urgency in her voice haunted me. I think maybe they were trying to help." Liam shot me a look, eyebrows furrowed in disbelief. "Help? Jess, they literally told us to leave." "Maybe they knew something we didn't," I replied. My voice trembled as I finally got the car door open. "What if that medallion means something? What if it's connected to all of this?" "Jess, come on," Liam said as I slid into the passenger seat next to him. "We should really get out of here. I don't want to be stuck in the middle of whatever this is." His words sank in, but determination pushed me forward. I can't just run away. There's too much at stake. With a deep breath, I turned to look back at the church, its silhouette jutting against the night sky. Something drew me to it, an invisible thread that pulled tight in my gut. I had to know what was going on. "Liam, let's go back to the church, just for a moment." "What? Jess?" He slammed his hands on the steering wheel. "You can't be serious. You want to go back to the place where we saw creepy figures? What if they come back? What if something worse happens?" I bit my lip, weighing the fear against my curiosity. "I just need to understand. Please," he sighed, his resolve crumbling under my insistence. "Fine." After a few minutes of driving, we parked in front of the church. The moonlight spilled over the landscape, illuminating every angle like a spotlight on a stage. I hesitated, my feet feeling heavy as I stepped out. The place thrummed with an energy that sent shivers through me. "Okay," I said, gathering my courage. "We go in, look around, and if anything feels off, we leave. Deal?" "Deal," he whispered, but I could see the apprehension in his eyes. As we crossed the threshold, the air felt thicker, the shadows heavier. The church had an unease that was palpable. I expected the flickering candles from before, but now I noticed something different.
A pathway behind the altar was partly obscured by shadows. "Jess, are you sure?" Liam's voice quivered. I nodded, feeling the pull grow stronger. I have to know. Then, just as I stepped forward, the door slammed shut behind us. The sound echoed like a thunderclap, and I spun around, heart racing. "Liam!" I shouted, panic surging. But his eyes were fixed on something behind me. Turning slowly, I felt dread pool in my stomach as I glimpsed movements in the darkness. The shadows twisted, taking form, and I knew we were far from alone. Chapter 6. Strange events at the local church that I've never been able to explain. The darkness shifted, and for a heartbeat, I felt frozen. Liam's eyes grew wider, and I turned to face whatever was lurking just out of sight. My breath quickened, but I reminded myself to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help us now. Then I saw it, a silhouette at the edge of the shadows. It wasn't just a shape. It seemed to ripple like the fabric of night itself. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. "Jess," Liam whispered. His voice was barely audible, but I could feel the fear radiating off him. "What is that?" "I don't know," I replied, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. We were trapped, and whatever that thing was, it felt like it wanted to devour us. The figure moved closer, its features becoming clearer. It had a distorted face, no, a mask, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural light. It raised a hand as if reaching for us. "Run!" I shouted, and without thinking, I grabbed Liam's arm and pulled him toward the altar. We darted past the pews, stumbling in our haste. The atmosphere thickened, weighing heavy on my chest. I expected the door to be my escape, but it had locked itself tight. I slammed my shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. "Jess!" Liam yelled, glancing back at the creature. "It's coming!" "Keep moving," I urged, racing behind the altar. There had to be another way out. The shadows felt alive, swirling around us, and I could hear a low growl mixing with the heavy silence. My fingers grazed the cold surface of the altar, searching for a hidden passage. That's when I noticed a faint glow coming from a crack at the base. "There!" I pointed, my heart pounding with renewed hope. Without hesitation, we knelt and began to pry open the hidden compartment. The glow intensified, revealing a small chamber beneath the altar. Before we could climb in, the creature roared. The sound sent chills through me. "We don't have time!" Liam grabbed my shoulder, and together we slipped into the chamber. It was cramped and dark, but it smelled sweetly of incense, like a forgotten memory. Just as we settled in, the entrance shook with a force that felt like thunder. The door was pounded from the outside. I pressed my back against the cool stone, praying it would hold. What was that thing? Why were we drawn here? The medallion weighed heavily in my pocket, a cold reminder of the danger we faced. "Do you think it's gone?" Liam's voice quivered, and I could hear the tremor in his breath. "I don't know," I confessed, the fear creeping back in. But just then, I heard something else, a faint whisper, echoing through the chamber. "Help us." The voice was melodic, yet haunting. It felt like it was pulling me in, wrapping around my thoughts. Who was it? What did they want? Then everything went dark. The faint glow of the crack vanished, pulled into the shadows. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I grabbed Liam's hand, heart racing. "What's happening?" I don't know," he managed, panic creeping into his voice. The shadows pressed in closer, and then I felt a presence brush against my cheek, soft and chilling. "Stay with us." I closed my eyes, fear clenching my stomach. The darkness was consuming, and somehow I knew we were far from safe. In that moment, I realized I might not leave this church, and if I did, I wasn't sure I'd be the same. The darkness seemed to envelop us entirely, a living, breathing entity yearning to consume whatever hope remained. I clutched Liam's hand, our breaths shallow and frantic. The whispers continued to swirl around us, a cacophony of desperate pleas that felt both distant and intimate. It was almost as if the church itself had awakened, and its very walls were now alive with the sorrows of the past. "Jess!" Liam's voice pierced through the chaos, grounding me amidst the unsettling whispers. "We have to find a way out, now!" I opened my eyes, focusing on the faint light that had flickered back into existence. The crack in the earth beneath the altar yawned like an invitation, taunting us to dive deeper. "What if it's safe?" I whispered back, heart racing with an inner conflict between curiosity and terror. Just then, a loud crash reverberated outside our makeshift refuge, as if the night itself were rebelling against our intrusion. Exchanging frantic glances, we knew our window of safety was closing fast. I pulled Liam toward the crack, the shadows inching closer, their presence prickling our skin like static electricity. "On three," I murmured, desperation framing our actions. 1, 2, 3. We scrambled into the opening, the world above us shrinking just as the darkness receded momentarily. Inside the cramped chamber, the air was surprisingly warm, carrying the scent of incense mingled with something earthy and ancient. My heart thudded in my chest as I reached for the medallion, its intricate designs catching the dim light. It pulsed in rhythm with my racing heartbeat, stirring an urge to understand whatever connection it had to the figures we had encountered. "What if this is a mistake?" Liam's voice trembled as he leaned against the chamber wall. "Maybe, but it's the only chance we have," I replied, glancing back at the entrance. The noises from outside grew louder, chaotic, as if multiple forces fought for control. "We can't go back out there, not yet." Suddenly, the whispers escalated into driven chants, overlapping until they became a singular roar. I couldn't distinguish the voices, but behind the intensity, there was a sadness, a desperation that resonated with everything we had uncovered. "Help us, help us." I looked at Liam, his gaze fixed on the medallion in my hand. "Do you think they're trying to communicate?" "I think they're trapped," I replied, a chill racing down my spine. Whatever happened here, those people, they didn't find peace. The walls of the chamber began to shimmer, revealing faint outlines of figures. Fragments of the past lingered among us, lost souls with stories that had yet to be told. Their faces were obscured, yet filled with an eternal longing. In that moment, I realized the medallion wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a key, perhaps the key to their release or to our doom. "Jess?" Liam's voice pulled me back from the mesmerizing visions. "What do we do?" "Maybe we have to confront whatever is blocking them from moving on," I suggested, half aware of the weight of my words. "But how?" Before either of us could suggest a plan, the whispers intensified, wrapping around us like chains. I could feel their urgency and recognized a fragile thread of hope hidden within. Leaning into the walls, I felt for something, anything that might give us understanding. And then, without warning, the ground trembled, pulling us back to our senses. "Hold on," I shouted, gripping onto Liam as the chamber quaked around us. The tone of the whispers shifted. It was as if they were pleading for us to act. "Make a choice! Help us!" the voices cried, desperate and raw. "Okay," I shouted back at the dark, at the shadows looming near. "How?" In response, the medallion in my hand pulsed stronger, almost as if it sought to lead us. "We don't know what it wants. We can't do this alone," I yelled, panic clawing at my throat. But in that chaos, I felt something shift. The visions materialized again, revealing fragments of children, their laughter mingling with shadowy figures, the choir before the fire. Determination flooded through me. We need to connect with them. We can't just turn away. Taking a deep breath, I focused on the medallion, drawing from whatever willpower I had left. "You are not forgotten," I yelled, conviction weaving through my voice. "We hear you. We're here." Suddenly, a bright light erupted from the medallion, illuminating the chamber.
An unearthly glow. The chanting grew into a single coherent voice, a prayer that surged through the walls and vibrating in my bones. Our surroundings whirled and twisted. I could almost see the children's faces, joyful yet tinged with sadness. Then, like a breath of fresh air, the weight of despair began to lift. The figures emerged from the shadows one by one, their past woven into the very fabric of the church and now free to cross over. "Yes," I whispered, awed by the power of what we had ignited. But just as hope began to bloom, the ground beneath us heaved violently. "We need to go," Liam shouted. I nodded, turning toward the escape. The shadows raged, forming a wall that pushed us back as the cries of the trapped souls echoed around us. "Hurry!" I yelled, grabbing his arm as we raced toward the fading crack at the altar. Just as we clambered out, the room exploded into chaos, shattered glass and light pouring forth into the night air, mingling with screams and echoes of souls finally free. We tumbled onto the church floor, disoriented, as the dawn began to break beyond the windows, illuminating the dust and memories suspended in the air. Did it work?" I panted, struggling to catch my breath. Liam stood, bewildered, scanning the fading shadows. "I think so. But I don't know what that means for us. What did we just unleash?" As the reality of what had happened settled in, I felt a sense of unease tightening in my chest. Our lives might never return to normal. Our understanding of Maple Grove had shifted. "I don't know," I admitted, gazing at the church. "But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. There's still something here, something we haven't faced." We stepped outside, the morning light bathing the church in warmth, yet it felt cold and heavy. And as we looked back, I couldn't help but wonder what would come next. Would the darkness return for us? Or had we just unlocked something we were never meant to access? Doubt loomed over my heart, lingering like a shadow. I stepped forward, fully aware that, though we had survived, many questions still remained unanswered. What was real? What was just a whisper in the dark? And most importantly, were we truly free?